This episode is brought to you by Huggies Little Movers. It's fun having a baby that loves to move, but it can be challenging to find a diaper that can keep up with them. Huggies Little Movers is designed to move with your baby. With either the double grip strips or the new HugFit 360-degree waistband, you can be confident relying on Huggies Little Movers for your active little ones. Huggies Little Movers, made with double grip strips or the new HugFit 360-degree waistband, so your little double can keep moving like you. Huggies, we got you, baby.
The Battle Labyrinth was like the hardest one just because like, it's got to have a maze and there's no way to make that look cool. Like it's just not a maze element.
It had to be amazing.
Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monster Donut, a literary and historical deep dive into the Percy Jackson series and all of its following spin-offs. I'm Phoebe, a dramaturg and story consultant, and relevant today, an artist.
And I'm Emily, a classic scholarish, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Orpheus Collar, the award-winning artist and adapter responsible for the King Chronicles graphic novels, as well as for many of the Percy Jackson, the Olympians, and Heroes of Olympus graphic novels. So Orpheus, thanks so much for coming out.
For those listening, Orpheus is pulling out many, many books right now.
Just a few. I got a stack.
Do you have a favorite cover? I know they're all your children, but...
I liked, the Serpent's Shadow was pretty fun, just doing a giant snake, Jafar, basically. And then House of Hades, I did not want to do I did not want to do this cover because it's a lot of work, but it's like kind of a reflection. I mean, the challenge is worth it. But, normally I'll draw like a back cover. It's like a, full image for, the front and back. But, because it was basically two covers in one worth of effort, I just did the simple cover for House of Hades.
It looks so cool, though.
Yeah, worth it. It's stunning.
I liked the Mark of Athena cover because it was just like a giant Athena Parthenos. But some people didn't like all the expressions of Percy looking in distress. So, but yeah, I was like, this is an excuse to put some giant, just Greek imagery right on the cover, which we don't usually lead with. Usually it's...
which makes me very excited.
And then the Last Olympian, with the close-up, I use that image for usually, up front for like a lot of presentations just because it's the best close-up we get of Percy.
I loved that one.
It's like a full scene, whereas usually it's like montagey, So, do I have a favorite? I just said, let me describe all the cover.
No, that was great.
No, it's fine. That was a good answer.
They're all my favorite when I'm working on them.
The answer was all of them.
All been favorites.
Thank you for all of the stellar artwork that you have contributed to this series. To kick us off, can we talk a little bit about how you actually got started working on the Riordanverse?
Yeah, so I always wanted to draw comics, loved comics. Went to art school, finished art school. I had a portfolio kind of more based on storyboards because I was like, there's no money in comics. Storyboards is the way. So, which is true, but also then I found the Percy job with a storyboard portfolio at Comic-Con. I met another artist I was introduced to named Attila Futaki. He was visiting from Budapest, but they call it Budapest. And he was shopping his portfolio around for comics, and he's very like traditional European illustrator, watercolor, very beautiful. And he had gotten this script for The Lightning Thief, and he was like, I don't know what this is. It's the Percy Jackson books are very coded towards America. It's like summer camp. He's in a middle school, even the private school situation when he's in the middle school, and then I guess does he go to a regular public middle school?
Maybe
once. But yeah, just like all that kind of stuff is very it's like very American cultural references. And even just like they go on a road trip through, across America, which I'm like, I know what this is. I've done that road trip before across the 40 or whatever it is through St. Louis, ending in California. So yeah, these are a lot of cultural references that he just like didn't wrap his mind around. And so I worked with him on his like audition pages, and we worked on them together to get the job. And the only confidence like we had in it was like, oh, they're making a movie of this. Like it must be pretty popular. Like this was 2010 when the first movie was like about to come out or was coming out. And they wanted like a more realistic style to be like movie-ish. So that was kind of the entry into it. And then we worked for like, that was the other thing is European pace is you do about like 48 beautiful pages a year, maybe 60 that are then turned into a giant, book a Band-Aid, Désigné, how they say it, but it's like a big hardcover usually. They call them albums, and those are usually one a year. And that's not the pace of like American comics. It's like the Percy book was like, let's do 128 in 9 months, and we have a schedule to keep and a deadline hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw you were doing like one a year for Heroes of Olympus, which is wild to me. Those books are so long.
Yeah, they are long.
Yeah.
And the adaptations are slightly longer because they're the Percy books for adaptations were all like 128 pages, and then the Heroes of Olympus were like 160. I think the first two were 200, and I was like, I can get it done in 160. If the budget's not going to change, we'll just shrinkflate it to 160.
Considering how long those books are, that's very impressive to me.
Yeah. Well, like anything that's description, obviously, like picture's worth 1,000 words, you can get rid of it. I mean,
right.
you
True.
take it into your brain and you put it into the drawing. But and then there's some plot points that can be repetitive, or characters repeating things in their head, or kind of POV stuff that you try to integrate into the drawing. So in terms of content, there was only like a few scenes that we like missed out of like Mark of Athena and House of Hades.
So you got your start your credit as the layout artist, right, for the Lightning Thief graphic novel?
Yep, layout artist. I also posed for the original cover. And Ares and a lot of the fight scene with Ares. I was like, they should be holding a sword like this. And I had this move where it's like,
amazing.
how do you block a sword? And he doesn't have a shield. And I thought like, well, he's really strong, Ares, so Percy will use 2 hands to guard it. And, I've asked sword people since, and like, because you could use the flat of the blade and not cut yourself. But, if it was like an invincible blade, that could work as a shield. Yeah. But a real sword person wouldn't do that because your sword would probably break. And
that's so funny. My camera roll is full of just pictures of me in the most ridiculous poses, trying to figure out how I'm going to draw this thing.
Yeah, that's totally, that's par for the course. Or if your friends posed strange. I had a mentor who he had like wacky, Paulo Rivera, he's a Marvel artist, and he had wacky reference Wednesdays on his like blog where he just posts all the crazy reference shots. I tend to keep those hidden away.
Right.
But
yeah, so you sort of got your start with the Lightning Thief, and then ended up later coming back in to do, was it the color work on Son of Neptune? Then you did the full art for Mark of Athena, House of Hades, and then even went on to not only do the art for the King Chronicles, but actually also adapt it. Yeah. So as somebody who isn't as familiar with the like graphic novel creation process, I was wondering if you could like talk us through all those different stages and sort of both your involvement with that in relation to the Riordanverse, but also just like what the difference is between the artist and adapter, since you've been involved at so many of the different stages.
Yeah, and so these are all adaptations, the Riordan books. So it's you're starting with something that's already popular, already known. And I don't like to separate the adaptation and the art. I was like, don't credit me as illustrator, credit me as adapted by so-and-so and so-and-so, or just adapted by. I think on the cover of King Chronicles I got that, but then on the inside they're adapted and illustrated by, and I'm like, it's the same action, because what is adaptation? It's just editing. It's figuring out what the best parts are, typing up an outline, and then the actual script for me is it's drawing the pictures out and the storytelling and seeing what you can actually fit on the page, and seeing like, oh yeah, I forgot about this part, or reading the descriptions and it's like, oh, like there's 7 more characters in this scene, like that all have to be shown visually because they're going to show up later or what have you. So so the layouts are kind of the script for me. That's where all the story content is, other than story content of like, it's this kind of t-shirt and like very specific things. Oh, and then the timeline was like, I had done Lightning Thief, and then Tilla wanted to do Sea of Monsters and Titan's Curse by himself. So I was like, hey, like I pretty much, the adaptation is just an edit job. I can do that. And so I started on the King Chronicles, and I was like, well, who do you want to illustrate it? And I was like, oh, I have a person. And I did sample pages. Who's going to color it? And I was like, I know somebody. These color samples are a little gray. It's like, oh, I'll let them know and make it more colorful. That being all me, which was great learning experience. It was a ton of work. And so, book 1, The Red Pyramid, was probably the hardest I've ever worked. And some of that's learning, and some of that's, working harder, not smarter. And not trying to work smarter, because I want to have every scene just be, wild. But you kind of learn what's going to actually be a point of emphasis, and like stick with people, over time, and be more judicious about, where you're going to spend 15 hours, on a page. So then I got so burned out by that. I was like, next time I just wanted to color a book. So maybe I don't want to draw anymore. I colored Lost Hero, and then I was like, okay, I can draw again, and then finished the Kane Chronicles. And so there was kind of jumping around between them. But yeah, for a good stretch, I was mostly working on Kane Chronicles. And then they tricked me into doing the last 3 Heroes of Olympus stuff.
So I'm curious also, like, I was looking back through House of Hades last night because that's just one of my faves personally. But I noticed there's a lot of interesting visual detail that's also not necessarily in the description of the book. Like I saw during the like Erinyes scene where they have a Greek letter sort of swirling around Percy and Annabeth, I think to like symbolize, it like kind of looked like cursed tablets to me, which is cool, which we'll get into reference points in a little bit later in this conversation. But I'm also curious how much, like, is it a sort of situation where you're looking at the book as you're drawing out a layout for a page, or is it more like you're kind of doing that work ahead of time and just sitting down and focusing on the drawing in the moment?
So usually I do the outline, and that's like all really referencing the book and so then when I'm then drawing, I will check it against what's written and see what's happening. And in some case, like what you were saying about the curses, he's cursed, and like how can we show that visually? It's not really described because you're describing the torment and the agony inside as he's becoming more cursed, and they're describing what's happening in like kind of the third person narration. So visually it's like, well, okay. And in their kids' books, so it's like it's not going to be like blood. So like how can we, all the blood is gold, all the monster blood. So it can be spattered with gold, and it's very violent, but it's also PG or whatever. And so the curses, it's like maybe it's Greek letters coming off of them and it's glowing. And so that's like an idea. I also listen to the audiobooks while I'm working. Because like visually you can be doing a lot of podcasts while drawing, not like during the outlining so much. Yeah. And so then that kind of refreshes the memory of what's happening in the book.
Did you ever have a moment you were listening to one where you were like, oh, I got to put even if it's a different scene, I've got to take something from 20 scenes later and bring it in?
Yeah. Usually that's like if there's a popular character that like, I know that's popular because of see the reviews or, I'll listen to. There weren't a lot of Kane Chronicles podcasts, but there's certainly like comments in like Goodreads and stuff or YouTube reviews sometimes has been more recent. So I'll listen to those and, there'll be things like, well, popular character in the Kane Chronicles is Anubis because he's kind of like paranormal teen romance werewolf.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, like I got to get him in as many, panels as possible. So like in a flashback scene, I'm going to add him in the, as a young werewolf boy in ancient Egypt. Oh, and then like, in the Last Olympian, in the script that they gave me, there was no, the adapted script, there was no like Selena, the Beauregard. And Charles Breckendorf, like there's a whole thing where they have a love story. She's like a traitor, and he does a heroic sacrifice in the beginning. And so like, I'm like, there's no reference to any of this in any of the prior books. In the graphic novels, it was never. So I had like a locket in the beginning that shows the two of them together, that shows her sad that he sacrificed himself, which wasn't in the book. But how can you kind of show it visually and feed these stories so it like has a emotional payoff, in kind of the abbreviated graphic novel version. Or like at the end of Labyrinth, Battle of the Labyrinth, there's no Luke in the whole book. And I'm like, well, we got 2 pages of scorpions like rattling around in crates. Let's cut those because it's empty crates. It's not very visual, interesting. I mean, it's quick to draw. Like, I would do that, but like we have limited real estate. Like, how about we take those 2 pages, put them at the end, and show like Luke emerging from the sarcophagus, like in his battle armor, ready for book 5. It's kind of like. You kind of need that, so anyway, yeah.
Right. You could always use more Luke.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
If he doesn't have a speaking role, if a character doesn't have a speaking role, they often wouldn't end up in the like adapted scripts when I was one. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to write my own outline and like.
Yeah. And then Luke is a funny one because he shows up for maybe like 3 scenes per book in a dream sequence. Yeah.
You guys had a question about, how do you design characters? And one thing that I always am like mindful of is like how often do they appear in the book? Because your main characters are you got to draw them constantly. They're on every page, like a Percy or an Annabeth. They're pretty much always there. So it's got to be pretty simple and it's got to be pretty symmetrical because just so you don't forget. Oh yeah, the shoulder pad was on this side and the pouch was on this side and but with villains like Luke, spoiler villain, but Lightning Pete spoiler.
I think everyone listening knows.
Yeah. But yeah, like villains like Luke or, like some of the monsters, they tend to be more like, like they're a 3-page or 10-page character. And so you can be more elaborate, or I can be more elaborate with their costume and armor and all that kind of stuff, or visual features, because I only have to remember it for like a little bit.
That's actually exactly what I was about to try and weave into this conversation, was the character design. I guess I'm curious how you approach designing a character. Are you specifically going off of like what is in the book? Are you going off of the official art?
So yeah, if there's official character art, I'm looking at that. I'm also reading the descriptions. And then I usually don't design characters up front. Like I won't do a model sheet up front. I did it for the Kane Chronicles just because I was trying to get the job, and it was like, make a visual presentation. But I really don't like to do that because you don't really know who the character is until they've like acted out in all the scenes and like done all the behaviors. It wasn't until like Last Olympian I was like, oh, Percy's sword is a pen. Like he should have a pen scabbard, that he pulls out. Like I've never seen that, and it'd be kind of funny. So, like character-based details, like kind of, they kind of come as you see the character do all their stuff. I mean, I think in the book it always reappears in his pocket, but I thought it'd be funny if he had like a pen holder or like, like with a trident on it.
Yeah.
So I think that's in Last Olympian, and I don't think I use it in any of the other books, but so I start with all like the character art and like anything that exists visually, and then book description as well, and see what their behaviors are, and then let that kind of guide. I also look at like if it's like Greek mythology, if it's like a monster or a god, I look at all the kind of classical, like the video game versions. I'll be looking at God of War, or Hades. Hades is newer, so it's not very the video game. I'll be looking at toys. Like there was a bunch of Egyptian toys that I bought like for Kane Chronicles, just to kind of like hold a Sobek in my hand and like pick up elements. So I take from everywhere and then just kind of see like what works. And then the other thing also with the Percy books, I think when I was on Kane Chronicles, it's like, this is my version and it's going to be really cool. And like, it's going to be like a movie. It's going to be like a Transformers movie, like all this action and crazy stuff. And it's like, well, the tone is actually like a little bit goofier often in parts. And like, you got to have that too. And then the fan art has their own view of the characters a lot of the time, especially with the Percy books. So as I would see that, I want to be more informed by that, because that's how the readers actually see these characters often. It's usually more of like a manga anime influence to the art. And that's kind of the direction when I was like, you got to get this guy, Antoine Daudet, who is a friend of mine, a French artist, we worked together on Battle of Labyrinth and Last Olympian to kind of get it more in the direction of like what we were seeing from like the fan art.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then I continued that approach through the books I worked on Heroes of Olympus. Like you're just seeing any depiction of these scenes, like somebody's probably drawn it, and then like that's like a first or a zero draft or sometimes more than that. There's a lot of really talented artists out there. So yeah, and then monsters. I mean, like you look at a video game, it's very asymmetrical. All video game designs you can tell it's from a video game if it's asymmetrical, because it's like a 3D model usually, and so they don't have to worry about consistency, because it's just going to be built in the model, like a giant shoulder pad. I keep going to the shoulder pad or the armor spikes. So yeah, I mean, like maybe in a video game I see like an Ankh, a blade handle with flame coming out of it, turning into a flaming Kopesh or something. That could be a design, and maybe I'll use something like that, even though no Egyptian sword actually had an Ankh for a handle. But you're using the iconography and mashing it up in a kind of modern way. I don't think I did that exact thing, but it's just in my head. And then the other thing I'll look at too would be like ancient sources. So for the gods, definitely for setting, go to Greece, go to Egypt, go to Rome, like look at the actual artifacts, look at the museum pieces that we have here in the US, like at the Met Museum has like a ton of stuff and is a scene in both Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and Kane Chronicles has a whole extended Metropolitan Museum of Art scene. Central Park, Cleopatra's Needle obelisk is like in the back of the Met Museum. So I'll also look at those as reference. And for the Egyptian stuff, I would, a lot of these statues, they have these kind of haunting looking faces because they'll be kind of smashed up over time, but it'll be very realistic eyes. And so like Serket, who's like the scorpion goddess, like I would, buy some scorpions in resin to kind of freeze-dried scorpions to kind of look at scorpions up close and, oh, cool. Put a lot of these in there. And then B, like her face, it's a literal statue that I saw, and then just like putting a scorpion on top and, and that she's like kind of broken, it's like, oh, well, that shows, she's kind of a villain. You can mess with the face a little bit. So things like that. Oh, Narcissus in Mark of Athena. I was like going through the Capitoline Museum in Rome and just like trying to find every aloof kind of pretty boy, statue I could find, taking photos of all of them and all the faces usually, just kind of like, I didn't know which one I would use because I was just trying to capture everything. But like, I was like probably, and try to get it from different angles because I know I'm going to have like, side angle. And a lot of these are also 3D scanned now. So you can like find people's 3D scans and like, if you know the name of the sculpture, you can usually pull it up, so it'll be a mix. But yeah, so I'll for Narcissus, I definitely tried to do the hair of like an ancient sculpture, and with Athena too, like that's based off the Athena Parthenos, and that's like a real statue. So and I want them to have these kind of faces that they had in antiquity, where there's like kind of like a bigger nose that you would have in a Disney movie, and kind of rounder chins. That kind of stuff. And the hairstyles on the women were it was often like they weren't sure. They were like, can you actually do these hairstyles, or are these like elaborate wigs that they had?
Yeah. Was it a wig designer or a hairdresser, I think, who actually tried it where you could like thread hair through a needle essentially and like sew into braids? Yeah,
I think that was like a few years ago. Like, I remember reading something to that effect, and I was like, okay, yeah.
I love little discoveries like that because the thing with archaeology is there's so many times where people are like, what is this? Must be religious. I don't know. Impossible. They aren't necessarily looking at other cultures as in depth as they're looking at their own. And sometimes there are things that they find that are still happening in the world that they think is impossible. So it's always interesting to finally like have all these people coming in and being like, oh no, actually. It's something that always tickles me when we find things out.
In the history of archaeology, it's like the history of paleontology, like dinosaurs. It's like, it's like, oh, yeah, the civilization, the Egyptian society started 6,000 years ago, but then they find one from 12,000 years ago. And now if you learned, 20 years ago, it's like, oh, okay, the Amazon was started being populated 2,000 years ago. And then they just found some paintings from 12,000 years ago. And it's like, don't quote me on those dates. But yeah, it can be like that because, all these dates are based off the record, the fossil record, and like what people found or rediscovered. So it's like it's a living story. The history is living. It's alive. It's constantly growing and mutating, and as we find things. And another thing that I think of with character that's kind of interesting is just what is the character? The character is every depiction that's ever appeared of the character. Like I just start doing drawings, and once I've done a bunch of drawings, in a book, of like Bast in the Kane Chronicles. Like that character only exists as those drawings. You can imagine her in other poses and stuff. But, that's literally all that's appeared, in terms of what I've drawn. So I'll often take all the images that I've drawn and kind of paste them on their own sheet. So I'm like, okay, find the common and then move that forward. And it's the same thing with antiquity. It's like, what is every version of Athena that's ever like from the archaic period? And it's like, there's not very many. There's like, and they all have their own names. It's like Demicon, Athena, or you probably know the names of the actual statues, but the Athena Parthenos, there were two at the Parthenon. There was the giant bronze one, Promachos, I think, Promachos Athena, and then the Parthenos Athena, which was like inside, the one that they find in Mark of Athena, that they rebuilt. So in Nashville. Have you guys been in Nashville to the?
Yeah, I have been there.
You have? Nice.
Yeah.
How does it look in real life? Is it like stunning or?
It is. It is stunning. I was kind of in like Lightning Thief movie mode because they have an entire display dedicated to the movie inside. Like they have the script on display, and I was like, weird thing to display and be proud of. I don't know.
And they have a different Athena statue in the movie. It's not the gold Parthenos. Yeah. I wonder if that was like a copyright thing or something. Because the artist sculpted that statue. There's a documentary about it on YouTube. If anybody's interested, it's cool to check it out. The guy making it.
Cool.
Because he's making his own interpretations and stuff. And so there might be a copyright on that statue for like film or something like that, where they might have gotten the rights to film in the museum, but not to film that statue. So it makes sense to have like Or it could have been a creative decision where it's like, that looks too crazy. Like, it's all gold and colorful, and Greek statues are...
Right, we need to make
Yeah,
it
they're
dull.
gray
This is
and-
the Lightning Thief
Yes.
movie.
I mean, that is a serious misconception about Greek statues, that they all, and all the buildings too, is all painted. That's one of the things I love about the new Disney Plus series, is that all of the cabins at Camp Half-Blood are so colorful, and that's what a lot of these buildings would have actually looked like in antiquity.
Yeah, and that's hard to reconstruct because there's only like a little bit of like polychrome like left over, and they've done the Met Museum has like a great the sculptures with all the color, and it's super bright. It's brighter than I'm sure that they actually had it, like, because like, that's pretty garish, and I'm like, I don't think it was probably garish, like, because it's the technology to scan the color, spectroscopy. I don't know what it is. It's picking up a red, it's picking up a yellow, it's, basic pigments, and they know what the pigments were made out of, but I think they're like fully saturating it in a way that it, like if you were an artist or craftsman, you wouldn't make it look that crazy. And the Greek face paintings don't look that crazy. Like, they're not, it's a similar thing that happens with comic books, like comic books from the 70s, 60s, whatever. They have this, when they reproduce them, they don't reproduce them with the actual colors. They're like, that's a blue, a bright blue, that's a bright red. And they don't take account for the paper being, a darker color. So it'll end up being really bright and crazy looking. And you're like, how did anybody read these? These look terrible. And then you see the original, it's like, the drawing's a little bit crude, but it's not like hurt your eyes color. So.
Yeah. When you see like a fully reconstructed, like painted Greek statue, it's like usually what's interesting is the marble or ivory or whatever they're made of at the time. It like looks very skin-like, which is it's giving a lot more like realism than I think people are expecting, which is always really disconcerting.
Yeah, when they have like the glass inlaid eyes.
You mentioned when we talked at Comic-Con, you went to Delphi. Have you seen the bronze charioteer with the eyes?
Yeah. The bronze statues are the really the most, I think, striking. I think that is he orange? Did they take off the rust, or is he kind of?
When I saw it in 2016, it was still green.
Yeah, that's probably what it would all be. First time I went to Greece, I went to the Parthenon Museum because the Parthenon best. Woo! There's nothing in the Parthenon Museum, and I was like, oh my god. Every pedestal I see, there's an empty pedestal where a statue used to be. They've taken it all. It's all in Rome. It's everywhere. It's every museum piece I've ever seen has just stolen this. And then I didn't know about the archaeological museum like a mile away. I didn't know there's two. Which like has like a lot of stuff, and the coolest, the biggest draw for me. I didn't know they had an Athena Parthenos in there. They've got a Roman copy from like 2,000 years ago, like from observation. So it's the best representation we actually have. It looks different than the one in Nashville. Like the costuming is a little bit different, and they didn't go into detail on the shield, so who knows? But they have that, and then the Antikythera wreck, which is like a shipwreck, and they had all bronze figures that were like lost in there. And the Antikythera mechanism is like the first computer ever made. Obviously not electronic, but like did some kind of calculation. But yeah, the figures that come out of it, there's this like cynic philosopher, and he's got these little yellow eyes and just like looks really like, mean and upset, and probably the withered, weathering of the sea probably also made him look a little spookier. But yeah, those eyes kind of looking out at you. It's
really haunting.
Pretty haunting, I think, yeah.
So my question, going back a little bit to graphic novels, is at what stage also, because you clearly have been looking, like we talked about it a bit too, but you clearly like really are paying attention to so much of the detail in these references. So I was curious at what point you start to look outside, particularly at the ancient sources, in your process of like creating the pages.
It's usually in the beginning. And before I like the first King Chronicles, I went to like the Met and looked at the Egyptian artifacts and stuff like that, and like anything I could find, exhibits. Going to the actual location, it became like a math problem of like, okay, I'm going to spend 2 months drawing ancient Egypt, actual locations. Like it probably makes sense to spend 2 weeks in Egypt, like actually looking at these places. Not even for like reference images I'll be able to find, but more like, what does time of day feel like? And these are contemporary too, like all these books, they're happening in the present. So it's like, what's the camel jockey going to yell at you when you don't offer him a tip right away, or something like that? These kind of, or how does he decorate his camel? What do the gift shops look like? Things that, where are all the, I have to draw the Pantheon in Mark of Athena, and it's like, I'm just Googling it. You're seeing a really clean image, but when you're there, there's the guard that's going to yell at you if you sit down in the corner, and there's, everybody just looking up at the Oculus with their cameras. So that has to be a view, like a panel in the comic, because that's the actual experience of going there now. But to answer your question about when, it's usually in the beginning. It's usually before, like I have kind of House of Hades, it's like, okay, they go to Venice, they go to all along the Adriatic Sea, didn't go to Croatia, didn't go to Diocletian's palace. That was only like a 2 or 3 page scene for like the actual exteriors, as it turned out. But yeah, I try to go to all the places and or see as many artifacts as possible, Roman artifacts in that example, beforehand, and like sketch for like a week or 2. And that's usually at the beginning of the process.
You mentioned, we talked as well, sometimes you'll hide in little Easter eggs where I think you said in House of Hades, the Hermes shrine was modeled after the one that's outside of Delphi that I think Alexander the Great built, if I'm remembering correctly.
It's the Tholos of, not Athena, Apollo. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's in Delphi or Delphi. And then, also we've got any really old readers will see we got the original Lightning Thief cover on the same page. And part of that too is like, they cut the Medusa scene out of the graphic novels. And that's before I would read the books. I would just read the script. And then like Perseus, his whole thing is he kills Medusa. Like, why? And they're all these famous monsters, and he gets rid of them all in the first series. So it's like, you're going to have the Minotaur show up again. Like the Minotaur is going to have to keep coming back. But Medusa's going to, and House of Hades, it's like a great way to do that because they're all dead. Yeah. They've been sent down there. I guess the other.
Right. And all of the curses.
Yeah. So you and the curses, when he's getting the curses, it's the curse of Medusa. And like, I'm putting an inset panel of him slicing off or holding Medusa's head, which, nobody told me to do that. That's just like, how can we flash back to this scene that if you were reading the graphic novels, you've never even actually seen, don't even know actually happened. But in books, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that scene. So, things like that.
Yeah. While we're talking about House of Hades, since it's, I think it's the latest one that's come out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'd love to spend some time talking about it. I have to compliment you on the art in that book. It is so stunning. Like, you've captured the tonal difference between the scenes on the Argo 2 and those in Tartarus so effectively, like through the colors, the composition, the line work, like even how close we get to the characters' faces, like you can feel the agony in Tartarus. It's so visceral. So can you tell us a little bit about like building Tartarus and the Tartarus look for the page?
Yeah, so that's part of like stumbling around these ruins. And for Tartarus, I was like, oh yeah, like this would really make sense because often I'm trying to recreate the shrines and like, look at the ancient version and try to show that. But with Tartarus, I was like, oh, well, Tartarus is like a dilapidated, it's where everybody goes afterwards. And so like what I was walking through, I think it was Hadrian's Villa and what was the other one? Ostia Antica outside of Rome, where they're actually more like, abandoned cities almost. And I was just like, well, what if this whole landscape was Tartarus and you have like these piles of rocks? Like it would make sense to just have like piles of rocks, maybe some skulls and stuff. And then just the sky, the blue sky would just be like cave, darkness, that kind of stuff. And then you could even have clouds. The clouds could be like, clouds of blood mist or whatever is described. So you could even have an atmosphere. There just wouldn't be a sun. It'd be like at night. So that was my first thought. But then the description is also like, you're walking on Tartarus's skin and it's his body. So there's these pustules and stuff like that. And then like when they're fighting the Arai, it's like there's all these trees, they're in a forest, but it's actually like hair. Like, so I'm looking at like, I'm looking at like medical drawings of like follicles with hairs sticking out of it. It looks kind of gross, like, really up close. Not all that works into the final, but that's kind of like what I'm looking at and like thinking about.
Yeah. It's also a book where you get to kind of like dig into, it's a much darker book.
Yeah. And that's probably easier for me. I mean, I think of it as funny when there's like, a skull face with like Annabeth with a worm coming out of her nose, but that's also horror. Like that's like a horror image as well. So, I'm from Baltimore. And so like I have like it's, never been scared anywhere else, for my life. I probably have a darker, I'd say Baltimore stories to people and they're like, it's a funny story to me. And it's like, they're like, oh, like living in California now. And it's like sunny, bright, so things I think are funny are, it's typically like, that can also be a scary thing because you're playing with expectations and you don't expect a thing. That's like what a scare is. And that's also what a laugh is. So, but yeah, you could go a lot darker with that. Sometimes too dark. That's a thing, a color issue where, how do you light a scene in the underworld? And you have to have the light, or you have to just make up a light. And if you get too dark, in the graphic novel, on the electric edition, no problem, ebook. But the graphic novel, you're also accounting for like the page and soaking ink.
Right.
And on the King Chronicles, I got proofs for all the books, and I could actually review and see how it was printing. You do your best, but it doesn't actually exist until it's the printed work. But on Heroes of Olympus, I was not sure about the color, how it was gonna, because I didn't get proofs to kind of check against to see how it was printing. So some of it was a little darker, oh, there was color there, and now it just looks black. I wouldn't read this at night. I was really when I got the books, the copies, I opened them. It was at nighttime, and I was just I can't see anything. Oh my god! Oh, everything is terrible. And then I looked at it in the sunlight. I was like, okay, you can see you have to look harder than I'd like you to have to look. But one hack that I'm learning is you can have I'm doing a scene in the underworld now where it's they're lighting it the way with candles, and well, the Greeks didn't have candles, they had lamps. The wick wasn't invented until Roman times. So, according to the fossil record, maybe there are candles we haven't found.
I'm realizing I've never once asked that question or learned about what the light sources were looking like besides the big braziers and the lamps and stuff. I'm gap in my education.
Yeah, if it's a night scene or a cave scene, if there's no sun or moon, you really have to think okay, if I don't draw it in, I'm gonna have to put it in the color, some way to light this thing. If there's magic spells, then cool. But yeah, so it can be, and you could do fake. I like the Zelda games, Tears of the Kingdom has the underworld. What do they call it? The depths. And that's they put really bright light on the ground, so it's really light coming from nowhere, but just there's just so you can see stuff. And it's not always bright; it can be really dark, and you have to illuminate the darkness. But yeah, those are always sources, and it's usually going to be an artificial source of some kind. Caves, so if you look at cave, for Hades, it's all underworlds and caves, and if you ever go to a cave, it's got crazy lighting, cool, but they always put these rainbow lights everywhere and make it really dramatic, which is not going to be your experience walking through a cave. Even with a candle, it's not going to be like that. But now they have high definition. Well, they got LED, lights, spotlights that you can take spelunking, and high definition cameras that work with low light. So there's a lot of spelunking videos that just weren't even there 10 years ago on YouTube that I can now because I never want to go in a cave. I'll watch these two brothers go through all the weird caves of Kentucky. I'll watch that while.
Right, Mammoth Cave.
Yeah.
I cannot watch caving videos. They raise my heart rate way too much.
It wasn't an option. Now it is. So as a reference thing. If you look up just images of caves, it's really hard to understand the context. Yeah. But video, I think, is pretty useful.
I was actually thinking about this when we went to Disney, because there was one with, what's the ride with a bunch of caves and stalactites and stalagmites in it? I think it was Matterhorn. I remember looking at it and being because I had, a few years ago, we went down to Shenandoah, where there's a really cool cave system, and we went inside one of the biggest caves, I think, in the U.S.
Yeah. Oh, you know where it probably was? Big Thunder.
Oh, Big Thunder.
Yeah, a fact check, throw up a screen cap of it.
Yeah.
I remember just thinking, this doesn't, they're doing a good job with this, but this doesn't capture it. It doesn't have that eeriness that a cave will have.
Sometimes on tours, they'll be like, would you like to go see cave darkness? And they'll turn off all the lights, and then, it's pitch black. 55 degrees always in a cave. And you hear the little tinkles of the water. But you don't see anything. But I think they should do that and, light a flashlight or I think a candle. I think you should go in with a candle. That would be a cool candle.
Yeah, you got to have the little
or
lamp.
Yes,
the lantern.
Because the cell phone lights are just too electric. It doesn't... you want a warm light.
Do you have any favorite moments or characters or locations that you've illustrated over the years?
Giza, the pyramids, with the Sphinx and all that. I guess it's not that complicated. Oh, the Hermitage Museum in the Kane Chronicles was crazy. Yeah, the Hermitage Museum, I'd never seen it. It's just crazy ornate. It's in St. Petersburg, Russia. And that's a 2-page, 3-page scene. So it's okay, we can go a little bit more intense with this. I was helped by my friend Cam Floyd. I was like, Cam, help me out on these backgrounds. I want them to look nice, but I don't want to spend all day doing it. So that was a pretty crazy discovery. And just to be able to get that on a page, something that ornate. So it's usually what's a challenge. Yeah. Oh, and then the Brooklyn house. I designed the whole Brooklyn house for, it's a mansion on top of a warehouse. So that was actually designing a location, and I designed all the interior so it'd be consistent, the floor plan. And then also, I'm just saying everything. The Argo 2, Argo 2 was a lot of fun as a location. And part of that was Rick had done he did a layout, like a kind of like a floor plan of it. You can find it online. But as I'm like breaking down the book and like figuring out, okay, there's these scenes and these scenes, it's like making sure that the choreography is like pretty accurate, and then, you know, so and so is staying in this room, and, you know, like, okay, so if there's a stable with a glass door, you know, underneath of it that Annabeth and Percy are going to have a scene in, and that's where that Nike will eventually fly out in the last book, or where they store the part, you know, all these kind of things. Like the Parthenos has to be rigged somewhere. I think it's in the boat, like in the novels, but I was like, I'm going to have it hanging on the bottom just so we can see it at all times, because it's a really cool image. I like to do that, like kind of figure out story points and continuity and design locations around that. And it has the tri come out, water mode. Oh yeah, like Leo's got a whole console. If he's got water mode or ship mode, that means that there's like rocket mode, and rocket mode happens in House of Hades, but it's never mentioned in Mark of Athena. But like, we have to have rocket mode as a button in Mark of Athena on the console, because it's going to happen later. You know, things like that.
Were there any scenes when you read the books that you were like, oh, I can't wait to like draw that?
It's usually the monster battles. It's usually the fights. That's like what I'm drawn to. That's like where I'm, and it's like what I would rather be reading and stuff. What I find is like most, but then what the fans like is generally like scenes of the characters interacting and just being real. So I try to put those in. Those aren't like, it's more like, where can I fit those in? And like thinking about it like that.
I mean, the monster fights that you have drawn are like my favorite pages.
Cool. Well, when I post them, you know, it's like the things that people respond to seems to be like characters holding hands, Annabeth, Percy looking at each other. And then like, I find like put really cool monster scene, and it's like much less engagement. So, but
it's
like
me reblogging. It's
giving them to little kids. It's like, you know, they just, you know, the measure of whether it's working or not is like, when do you put it down first? And like, they will, I've seen them like look, and they'll just keep going. And like, you know, they're in it if you put it in front of them. I think House of Hades might be the hardest one, because it kind of starts with that like Hecate scene, a lot of swirling, a lot of like vagueness, and a lot of talking and you know, exposition. Because the books are always like, this book started when my house nearly blew up, or Jason died, and then what happened, you know, or like Jason was dead, or, you know, it's like things like that. So there's always like a little hook, and you have to have that up front, some kind of feeling of tension and stuff.
Yeah. And then House of Hades, you're like, there was a huge cliffhanger, and we're going to start with this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I tried to switch the order. I tried to start it with them falling, because it just makes more sense. And they were like, no, it has to start with this scene. I'm like, okay, well, at least we'll have the swirling, you know, storm or something to show there's some kind of something happening. Because if it's just like, oh look, Hazel left the boat, who's Hazel, we don't know who Hazel is, who are you, nobody says their names, you know, obviously if you read all the books, but if you're just picking it up, you're like, what is happening? So also being mindful of character relationships, and making sure that like Hazel is going to be grouped next to Frank, because they are, you know, they have somewhat of a relationship. You know, like kind of grouping the characters together on the boat so that, you know, it makes sense. Or when we know, like, okay, Nico has a crush on Percy, like that's going to color how he interacts with him a little bit.
Right.
And sometimes when the first time you're drawing a character, you don't, some of these books were still being written when I started the adaptations. But yeah, like once you know kind of the full arc, you can kind of tailor it towards that. And if there's a scene they don't like in Kane Chronicles, people did not like that, like Anubis and Walt got merged. Like, I don't know, it was just like some people maybe it was a little controversial, I think. And so I'm just like, okay, well, we know that, but you can't change it because it's just how it is. So it's like, how can you seed those expectations, you know, have Walt be more Anubis like, have Anubis be more Walt like, you know, Walt has an Anubis shirt on at some point, you know, like kind of things like that.
That's cool to hear. I love like visual callbacks and foreshadowing. It's one of my favorite parts, especially going back to reread something once I know what's happening.
Yeah, it's something I had it with like the Toy Story movie, where I saw it as a kid, and then I would like watch it again, and every time I watched it, I would like understand new things, or like have like there was a lot of rewatchability to it, because it like some of the notes hit different. And I hopefully the books can work that way too. You read it when you're 12, but then you can pick it up when you're 20 something, and it's like, this actually looks like that location. Or, now I've been to ruins of the Soviet Union. Now I see why Ares has a hammer and sickle on his belt. Like, you would never make that connection, but Attila grew up in the Soviet Union, so that doesn't really have anything to do with Ares, but it's his biography. And rest in peace, Attila died last year, and so I don't think he was even 40 yet. Had good times when I knew him. And part of all this is thanks to him. So
I think that's a great note for us to end on.
So our last question is, at the end of every summer at Camp Half-Blood, the campers get given a bead that has sort of a design on it that's symbolic of that summer. So we were wondering, if you wanted to give a bead to your time as a Riordanverse graphic novelist, what would you pick to be on that?
I think, you can't put a lot of detail on them because they're like pretty small. Because I try to draw but I put them in the books. Like once I knew it was a plot point, I was like, okay, I'll try to have them. He usually has the beads on, like in like Last Olympian at least. I might have forgotten after that, but and then I think we even drew close-ups of them in like maybe Son of Neptune, or I can't remember. I know there was a close-up of the beads at some point. So probably, I mean, the sincere, the probably a stylus, maybe a riptide of some kind, something to draw with or write with, or being cheeky, I could do a dollar sign. A good memory, right? So probably one of those two. I guess you could do a pyramid. A pyramid would also be good because I did a lot of Cane Chronicles. Oh no, the Eye of Horus. Yeah, that would be good too. And I don't think any of the Greeks have that symbol on their bead. And it's a good symbol. An early viral image. You got like Christ, the cross, and then like the Gorgon that's on everything. The Gorgon on everything. It's on everybody's armor. It's on shields, walls, and then like the Eye of Horus and all the hieroglyphs just everywhere, all over Egypt. So one for each series.
Right. Yeah.
The Eye of Horus for Cane Chronicles, dollar sign for one of the Percys, and then a riptide for Heroes of Olympus.
Great. Perfect choices.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. This was a blast. Please plug the many things that you have been working on.
Oh, yeah. So right now I'm doing a tour through Delaware. I don't know when you guys will post this. It might be over by then, but I do school visits, library visits, and kind of talk similar things. I have my own book, Munch. It's about a very hungry caterpillar with an insatiable sweet tooth who gets on the wrong side of a high-tech pest control company. And there's some Mothman cryptozoology aspects, natural history of Pokemon kind of vibes. And then I'm working on Eurydice Lives Again, which is that's what I'm calling it right now. Originally it was House of Hades, Orpheus's version, but I have 100 pages done, and I have a pre-order link or an order link on my website, orpheusarts.com. And I should be getting the books this week. The 100-page version, it's not the fully complete, but it's like self-contained enough. And so this is my name, Orpheus, is Greek mythology. He's actually Thracian, not Greek, but I learned that studying. And it's terrible. I've always had to explain the name and explain the story, and it doesn't end well for Orpheus or Eurydice. So I was like, well, how about I do a revisionist kind of sequel framed around other, mythological characters that also had to go to the underworld, and also designing around other characters with looks that can kill. So he looks back, loses Eurydice, Medusa, Perseus, dealing with death gazes, and then they're writing Actaeon, who he got turned into a deer. From looking at the wrong goddess at the wrong time. So, and eaten by his own dogs. So, how can we liberate these characters and give them a happier ending? Maybe it's a happy ending. But yeah, if you do go to Athens, I based my Hades off of that philosopher, the bronze philosopher. And some of the chariot elements were also found in the Antikythera wreck. But
wow, I can't wait to read that.
Yeah, I can send you guys like a digital copy, or if you give me shipping, I can get you a...
We'll be taking you up on that.
Cool. And then Instagram, Orpheus Collar, just my name, so you can find me there.
Thank you so much again for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Everyone check out all of the many graphic novels, and have a great what you're doing today.
Signing tour, yes. For anybody that wasn't there up top, I'm at the Hockessin Bookshelf in Hockessin, Delaware, on a 38-stop tour. All through the East. Incredible. So, talking to you.
Thank you all for listening to Monster Donut. Thank you, Orpheus, of course, for being here. This was a lot of fun. Next time, we are finally doing, and we mean it this time, the Riordanverse, Greco-Roman Riordanverse wrap-up. There's nothing else for us to cover that can get in the way at this point.
I mean, we haven't done all the graphic novels. I did.
That's true. No, we'll save those. So, I guess since we're on the topic of artists, you could check out our art on our Instagram.
You should check out Phoebe's art.
Yeah, our Instagram, I haven't posted as much art recently, but I think I'm going to post some art for this episode because it only makes sense.
Yes, please do. I love your art.
There's plenty of fan art on our social media, which is at PJOPod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. And on all of those social medias, you can find our link tree where we have links to our Patreon, if you would like to join us on Patreon, where we have some exclusive episodes. Especially recently, we had our Court of the Dead predictions episode, as well as our San Diego Comic-Con, immediate recap from the hotel room episode. And more is to come over there. You'll also get, art previews. I'm just going to keep bringing up art because this is the art episode. The only art episode we'll ever do. We also have links to our merch shop. If you would like to support the podcast monetarily, you can do that through those links, as well as the link to our Ko-fi coffee that is also in our link tree. If you are not able to support us monetarily, that's cool. You can just share us with a friend, rate us, review us. We deeply appreciate it. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can get in touch with us at monsterdonutpodcast@gmail.com. And to wrap us up, thank you to all of our patrons. Latino Kaya, Patty VCK, Bethany from Public Works, Sydney Fox, Joke, Reina Avila Ramirez Ayano, Ethan Not Nakamura, Kels, Mason Bowman, Casey Cassidy, Busy Cat, Natalia, Melissa Rounds, Cake Coffee, Sasha, Alana, Pamela Ion, The Kid on Her Own, Grace Hunker, Kaylee, Mana Munshin, Calamity, Eddie Burns, Sarah Brown, Colby Redfern, May, Anna, Pahanma Kumarasinghe, Christina Kim, and Mallory Roscoe. Thank you all for all of your support. We deeply appreciate you.
Thank you.
So long. Thank you all for listening. Goodbye.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. That's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter.com/zip.